Discover 6 spine-chilling ghosts captured on camera, terrifying paranormal secrets exposed. Kate had found what she thought was a sanctuary, a quaint suburban neighborhood in Ohio, where immaculate lawns breathed tranquility and welcoming porch lights whispered promises of security. She envisioned bright futures for her 2 children, Ethan and Lily, a chance to escape the suffocating grasp of her ex-husband. But soon, the supposed haven revealed its cracks, and the calm atmosphere warped into something eerie. It started with the whispers. Soft but persistent, they snaked through the air at night, barely audible, just enough to make Kate's heart rate quicken. She would lie awake, afraid to move, her breath shallow as if the walls themselves were breathing down her neck. Objects in the house began to shift. The living room chair was always a few inches off its usual place, and the kitchen cabinets hummed with a strange resonance, as if eager to reveal their secrets. Whenever she thought of these odd occurrences, Kate shook her head, convinced it was just the stress of their recent upheaval. And Ethan, once filled with glee at having his own room, now jumped at shadows. "Mom, something's in my closet," he'd murmur, his wide eyes shimmering with fear. Lily, meanwhile, drew pictures that chilled Kate to the core. In her small notebooks, dark figures cast elongated shadows, lurking in the corners of their living room, haunting the bright pastels that framed her innocent world. One evening, as dusk settled, Kate cleaned the clutter books stacked high, toys strewn about when she overheard teenagers outside, their laughter tinged with something sinister. "Did you hear about the Johnsons?" one said, a shiver carving through her spine. "They just vanished, gone." More murmurs whispered of darkness and dread. Those once innocent porch lights flickered ominously, and Kate felt a tight grip of fear encircling her chest. The rumors stirred protective instincts in her, igniting the realization that danger lurked behind her once innocent suburban facade. "Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue." With trembling hands, Kate set out to document the strange occurrences, her phone capturing every creak of the floorboards and every breath of the night. But what she reviewed chilled her to the bone. Faint, ghostly figures flickered in the background of the footage, shadows dancing just out of reach. Then there was Mrs. Holloway, her sweet neighbor, offering cookies with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. The breadcrumb trail of connection to the missing Johnson family began to weave a tapestry of dread around Kate's mind. Mirrors cracked, freezing thoughts and laughter mid-air, while a heavy feeling of being watched cloaked them all. She turned to the local police, her panic spilling into their disinterested smiles. "Just give it time," they said. But time was running out. And Ethan, her little boy, was growing quieter. Until the night he vanished, slipping into shadows as if he were born from them. The horror spiraled as Kate realized that these hauntings, fanged and sharp, were reflections of her own buried trauma and fears. What were these spirits? Were they merely figments of her imagination, or were they ever-present dangers of the past? Each revelation pulled at her sanity, and as she stared into the flickering lights, a shadow behind Mrs. Holloway beckoned her closer. Would she discover the truth before it consumed what remained of her family? The fight against the darkness was only just beginning. Kate's heart pounded as she took shaky steps toward the porch, the flickering lights casting a ghostly glow over her trembling figure. She fought the urge to retreat, knowing she needed answers roaming beyond her door. The whispers outside grew louder, curling around her like ivy strangling an old oak. What truth lay behind those walls of smiles and manicured lawns? As she stood at the threshold, hesitation clawed at her throat. Then she heard it again, Ethan's voice, faint and distant, drifting through the air. "Mom, help me!" Panic surged, and without thinking, she rushed into the darkness beyond her front step. Dread plummeted in her chest as she stumbled into the yard, her breath coming in ragged gasps. Moonlight bathed everything in an otherworldly glow, and shadows danced at the periphery of her vision. The laughter of teenagers had died down, replaced by an unsettling silence, as if the entire neighborhood was holding its breath. Kate's phone, the flickering screen her only beacon, illuminated the ground ahead. She could see nothing but the pale white of the grass, crisp and bleached under the full moon. "Ethan," she called, her voice cutting through the thick air. The only reply was a chilling rustle, like whispers in the wind. She squinted into the dark, eyes scanning trees for any sign of movement. A sudden flicker from her phone screen caught her attention. As she turned to investigate, something darted behind Mrs. Holloway's house. Without thinking, Kate bolted toward it. The closer she got, the more a sense of foreboding settled in her gut. The neighbor's house loomed like a sentinel watching, waiting. The curtains twitched. Who was watching? Panic tightened its grip. "Mom." It wasn't just a whisper. It was a sound that begged for help, dry as dust and sharp as glass. It came again, echoing from within the depths of the house, but it sounded different this time, filled with urgency but also tinged with sorrow. Reaching the door, she knocked, the sound hollow against the stillness. No answer. In a moment of reckless determination, she pushed the door ajar, stepping inside. The front room was dimly lit, shadows clinging to the corners like thick cobwebs. A musty odor hung in the air, a mixture of old wood and something more sinister. "Ethan?" Her voice quavered, barely more than a whisper. The floor creaked under her weight, the sound echoing ominously through the empty house. Slowly, she ventured further in, her heart racing. Each room was a tomb, silent yet alive with a tension that pressed against her chest. Until she reached the kitchen. There, a chair sat turned backward at the table, as if someone had just been there, someone who shouldn't have been. On it, pieces of paper scattered, sketches drawn by small hands. As she stepped closer, dread unfurled in her belly. Those were Lily's drawings. The dark figures lurking in the corners were the same things that haunted their home. Her vision honed in on one particular sketch. It seemed to quiver, shifting under her gaze. And then she heard it again. Mom Ethan's voice floated from the back of the house, a sound threaded with terror. She turned, a visceral fear biting at her heels. "Ethan." She rushed toward the voice, heart hammering. Just as she reached the doorway leading to the back, the lights flickered violently. In that moment, fear morphed into absolute horror. A figure stood in the shadows, indistinguishable yet unmistakably there, a darkness that felt alive, reaching for her with skeletal fingers. She stumbled back, breathless, the figure shifting, melting into the dark. The lights glared back to life, but what they illuminated made her blood run cold. Ethan was standing there, eyes wide, unfocused, as if trapped in a dream, a stranger behind his familiar face. "Mom, they want you," too. The words dropped like stones in her heart. Who were they? What had this neighborhood truly hidden? In that moment, as she locked eyes with what was left of her son, a chilling realization gripped her. She couldn't just fight the shadows. She needed to understand them. And that would take her deeper into danger than she had ever dared to tread. What secrets from the past had entwined with the lives of those in the neighborhood? As Kate stood paralyzed by dread, she knew one thing: the fight for her family's survival was spiraling into something far darker than she could fathom. With a deep breath, she stepped further into the abyss, ready to uncover whatever truth awaited. Kate felt the chill of dread wrapping around her throat like a vice. She couldn't look away from Ethan's vacant stare. It was as if something had stolen him completely, leaving behind just a shell, a hollow version of the boy she knew. "Ethan, what do you mean?" she asked, her voice trembling. His lips quirked, but it wasn't a smile. It was a grimace, a flicker of something unsettling beneath his empty gaze. "They want you," he echoed, almost mechanically, as if rehearsed. The kitchen around them seemed to pulse with menace. The air grew thicker, wrapping around her lungs, pressing down as the shadows deepened. From the corner of her eye, something moved, a flicker of dark in the hallway. She turned her head sharply, her heart racing. Who wants me?" But Ethan remained still, his body rigid. The silence that followed her question was deafening. Kate felt the urge to flee, but she couldn't leave him like this. With an unsteady breath, she stepped forward, instinctively reaching for him. "Ethan, please, talk to me. What do they want?" But as she touched his arm, a jolt of icy energy shot through her. Ethan flinched, pulling away, confusion sharp in his eyes. "Mom, don't. They'll come with you." The shadows deepened, swirling around like a storm. In that instant, the air grew colder, an unnatural chill creeping into her bones. A low hiss slipped through the walls, cutting through the silence. "Help him," the whisper said, echoing from every corner of the room. "Who's there?" Kate managed through clenched teeth. Her hands trembled as she fought the rising panic. Suddenly, the lights flickered again. This time, the darkness felt alive. Shapes began to form, sculpted from smoke and whispers. Eyes burning with an unholy glow blinked into existence, revealing a circle of figures at the edge of her vision. Their faces were a horrific blend of suffering and wrath, shadows of the damned, clawing for someone. "Mom!" Ethan's voice shrank to a whimper. "Run!" In a flash, her maternal instincts ignited. Kate could not abandon him. Not now, when he needed her most. "I'm not leaving you," she barked, glancing back at the swirling shadows that shifted closer, ever closer. The air thickened with their breath, a rancid smell creeping into her nostrils. It surged through her like liquid fear. Without thinking, she lunged for Ethan, grasping his cold hand tightly. "We're leaving. Now." But just as she turned, she stumbled backward, tripping over the dark figures that now spiraled around her feet. The whispers crescendoed, a cacophony of anguished cries merging into a single, chilling plea. "Join us!" The word sent a bolt of ice through her heart. With Ethan's hand clutched in her grip, Kate pressed against the darkness, fighting for the doorway. But shadows hung like thick curtains, pulling at her, siphoning her will. "Mom!" Ethan shouted, panic breaking through. The darkness surged forward, clawing for them, hungry and relentless. They were lost in a storm of despair and shadow, pushing against something far beyond their understanding. "Hold on!" she shouted, fear lending strength to her resolve. They broke free, tumbling side by side through the doorway leading to the backyard. Darts of moonlight pierced through the opening, illuminating the scene behind them. The figures loomed then, twisting back into the house, as if guarding their secrets again, waiting for the next opportunity to strike. Kate held Ethan close, her breath coming in agonized bursts. The area outside was suffocatingly still, the distant sounds of laughter returning as if the world had not changed. But she could feel it. Something shifted, an insistent, dark presence lingering just beyond the threshold. "What do we do now?" Ethan asked, his voice trembling against her shoulder. "We find a way to break this," she vowed, determination hardening her resolve. With a deep breath, she looked back once more at the house, a locus of darkness that twisted the reality she held dear. But the porch lights flickered again. This time, they didn't merely flicker, they extinguished completely, plunging them into a silence that seemed to cackle with hidden laughter. "Mom!" Ethan's voice trembled again, panic seeping into his tone. "It's not over, they're coming." As she clutched him tighter, the night felt alive with a menacing hunger. Whatever lingered in that house was not yet finished with them. And just when she thought they had escaped, she heard the whispers once more, clearer this time. The real game is just beginning. What horrifying truths awaited them in the shadows? As dread filled the air, the sense of impending doom weighed heavily on her. Kate braced for what was to come. The darkness beyond the threshold seemed to breathe, almost alive. Shadows shifted and writhed, as if they were waiting for Kate and Ethan. The air felt thick with something unnameable, a presence that clawed at her insides. Goosebumps crawled across Kate's skin, each whisper wrapping tighter around her like a noose crafted from dread. "Mom, I don't want to go back in there," Ethan whimpered, his small frame shaking against her. She felt the weight of his fear, a palpable thing that pressed down on her, making it hard to think. "We won, Kate whispered fiercely, attempting to draw strength for both of them. But even as she spoke, her gaze was drawn to the porch, where the darkness swelled like an angry tide. The house loomed behind them like a beast poised to strike. "We just need to regroup." They stood at the edge of the yard, where the grass felt damp against her feet, clinging to her like a pleading voice. But from the depths of the shadows, something stirred anew, a soft tapping, like fingernails dragging against wood. A sick sense of curiosity tugged at Kate. It beckoned her, as if it knew she couldn't resist. "Mom, please." Ethan's terrified plea broke through the haze of her thoughts. He pulled her backward, away from the porch. But just then, a light flickered back on in the kitchen, a pale, sickly glow. Kate turned to see a figure standing at the window, silhouetted against the drab light. The shadows contorted, revealing a gaunt face with sunken eyes that seemed to reflect the very essence of despair. It was a face she did not recognize, and yet, it felt familiar, stretching memories she thought had faded away. "Ethan!" she gasped, stepping forward instinctively. "Did you see that?" "Mom, we can't. We have to go." His frantic grip tightened on her. But her heart raced with confusion. Maybe they have answers. Maybe this is how we break whatever this is. The desperate thought slipped from her lips, echoing the darkness around them. Before she could think it through, Kate stepped closer to the window, drawn in by the unnatural glow pooling on the floor. As she did, the whispers grew louder, a symphony of torment rising to a deafening crescendo. "Join us, stop. Please." Ethan screamed, now tugging hard at her arm, rooted in fright. "Mom, don't listen." Her eyes, however, were locked onto the figure. A slow smile spread across its lips, a grotesque caricature of joy. It beckoned with long, bony fingers, as if promising her something she thought she had lost. Determination warred with fear within her. Suddenly, a sharp crack split the air. The window shattered, sending shards of glass raining down. The figure was gone, replaced by an empty room filled with the echoes of tortured cries. Kate stumbled back in shock. "What was that?" "They're trying to lure you." Ethan screamed. "We have to go now." Panic ignited Kate's instincts. She spun around, pulling him along as the whispers morphed into roars. They raced across the yard, the laughter of the darkness closing in, the shadows clawing at their backs. But the moment she reached the edge of the property, she felt a sudden force, like a heavy wind pushing against them, refusing to let them pass. "No! No!" Ethan shouted, his small voice filled with despair. With every ounce of strength, she pushed against the invisible barrier, but it felt like running against a wall of steel. Just beyond, the neighborhood loomed quiet, peaceful, an illusion that felt so far from their truth. "It's a trap, Mom!" Ethan cried, his eyes wide with terror. "We have to find another way." Kate's heart thudded painfully against her chest as she looked back at the house. The figures returned at the windows, their faces twisted in agony, a haunting chorus of wretched souls. Ethan's grip tightened. "They're not done with us, please. I want to let them take you." Kate yelled, her voice rising as desperation clawed at her throat. In that moment, a single thought ignited within her, a chilling truth that surfaced clearer than the whispers around them. This wasn't just about escaping, this was an all-out war. "Look!" she shouted, eyes darting toward the side of the house. "The cellar. We have to get to the cellar." The shadows surged behind them like a wave, hunger radiating from every darkened corner. They took off, their footsteps echoing against the retreating laughter, knowing that time was not on their side. As they reached the cellar door, the whispers became a torrent, a violent cacophony promising torment. Kate ripped the door open, dragging Ethan inside. The darkness swallowed them, a thick black that pressed close, suffocating yet protective. The moment it closed behind them, silence fell. But it wasn't the quiet of relief, it was a foreboding stillness, a calm storm before the inevitable fury. "What now?" Ethan whispered, fear still trembling in his voice. Kate's eyes strained against the darkness, but she knew their fight was far from over. "We have to find out what they want with me and how to end this." But as she spoke, the air shifted subtly, a motion of intent wrapping around them. Shadows darted past, busy with unseen purpose. Kate felt a cold sweat trickle down her spine, a chill that sank into her bones. "Faster," Ethan whispered, voice shaky. "They're coming." And in that moment, she felt it, the defining knowledge that they had just stepped onto a battlefield, a trap set by something far more ancient and dreadful than she could ever understand. With hearts racing, they plunged deeper into the bowels of the darkness, still unaware of the trap closing in behind them. What awaited them in that suffocating abyss? Would they find answers or something far worse? The darkness pressed tightly against them in the cellar, as if it were a living entity eager to swallow them whole. Each breath Kate took felt heavy, like inhaling shadows and whispers. Ethan's small hand clung firmly to hers, his heart racing in sync with hers, a frantic rhythm of survival. "Mom, I think I heard something," Ethan murmured, his voice barely above a whisper. His eyes darted, searching the thick blackness around them. "Stay close," Kate said, trying to mask the tremor in her voice. The silence felt deceptive, an edge of anticipation hanging in the air, thick as fog. A faint scratching echoed from the depths of the cellar, unnerving Kate to her core. It was a sound that seemed familiar, yet alien, like nails scraping against wood once more. She strained to listen, her heart hammering louder, the distant echoes melding into a chaotic symphony of despair. "Ethan," she said, yearning for reassurance. "We need to find a light. We can't just stand here." He nodded, eyes wide, but terror painted across his face. "But what if?" Before he could finish, a soft thump shuddered through the ground. Fear wrapped its icy fingers around Kate's throat. "We have to move," she urged, pulling him toward a narrow passageway at the far end of the cellar. As they navigated through the cramped space, the temperature dropped sharply, the chill biting at their skin. Shadows flickered at the corner of her vision, dancing along the walls like malevolent spirits. She could feel their presence behind them, agitated and hungry. "Mom." Ethan pulled on her arm. "I don't want to go deeper." "Why is it so cold?" "I know, just a little farther," she promised, struggling to push the panic back. Suddenly, in a fit of desperation, she flipped her phone's flashlight on. The beam cut through the dark, illuminating dust particles swirling like tiny ghosts in the air. But the light also unveiled something far more unsettling, a series of shapes lined along the cellar wall. Old tools, rusted artifacts, and something that didn't belong. "What's that?" Ethan whispered, pointing to a large, ornate mirror. Its surface seemed undisturbed, and yet the reflection didn't match the surroundings. Instead, it showed a blurred, darkened version of the cellar, its features distorted like a puddle after rain. "Stay back," Kate ordered, a shiver crawling up her spine. "Something is not right." "But it's just a mirror, Mom," Ethan protested, though he stepped backward, eyes locked onto the glass. Kate felt a need to approach, an inexplicable compulsion to look closer. The shadows seemed to shimmer against the mirror, whispers growing stronger, beckoning her with promises of clarity and answers. "Maybe it'll show us what we're dealing with." "No," Ethan cried, the fear clear in his voice. "Don't look in it." Before Kate could protest, the glass rippled as if a stone had been thrown into still water. The air buzzed, thickening with energy. A dark shape began to form in the reflection, swirling wildly like smoke. Ethan's hand gripped tighter onto Kate's arm, knuckles turning white. "Mom, we need to get out of here now." But she couldn't look away. The shadows pooled inside the mirror, coiling and writhing, revealing grotesque faces etched in anguish. They reached toward her, mouths twisted in silent screams. It was as if the mirror was a portal, showing the tortured souls trapped within the darkness of the house. What are you?" Kate gasped, her voice barely a whisper, yet the words echoed in the surrounding void. With a sudden burst of resistance, she stumbled backward, breaking the trance. The mirror cracked, spiderweb fractures spreading like a plague across its surface. "Mom!" Ethan screamed, breaking through the suffocating haze. "We have to go." "Right, let us move." She turned, yanking him away from the chaos, desperate to escape the horrors that threatened to spill out into their reality. They ran down the narrow passage, breathless and terrified, the sound of the cracking mirror echoing like a death toll behind them. Each twist and turn felt endless, shadows tripping at their heels, the oppressive weight of the house turning into an avalanche of dread. But just as they reached an old wooden door at the other end, a chilling wind surged through the cellar, slamming it shut with an explosive force. Ethan fell to the ground, terror washing over him. "We're trapped." "No." Her heart raced as she pounded on the door, panic swelling in her throat. "We can't be, there has to be a way." The whispers picked up again, jagged and furious, echoes bouncing off the walls as if the house itself was answering. Kate spun around, scanning their new prison, knowing time was slipping away like sand through her fingers. "Ethan," she breathed, "if we can't escape the door, we might have to face whatever's in here with us. We have to be brave." Just then, a low growl rumbled from the shadows behind them, a sound so ancient and primal that it made her bones ache. A figure stirred in the darkness, a throne of shadows rising behind, its form barely perceptible, yet undeniably real. "Mom," Ethan whispered, eyes wide with terror. "What is that?" And as the dark entity slowly revealed itself, Kate knew this confrontation would define everything they were fighting for and leave nothing but despair if they failed. What had they awoken deep within the walls of that cursed house, and could they ever find a way to defeat it before it consumed them? The growl reverberated through the cramped cellar, a sound more akin to the growl of a wounded beast rather than anything human. Shadows flickered like flames across the straining walls, twisting the already grotesque figures into new forms. Kate could barely breathe as the thing moved closer, its presence squeezing the air from her lungs. "Mom!" Ethan shrieked, scrambling backward, his small frame pressed against the wooden door. "What is it?" Panic surged in Kate's chest, but she forced her eyes to stay on the encroaching darkness. The entity pulsed with a life of its own, swirling with emotions that felt primal and hungry. "I don't know," she answered, trying to project calm even though terror tangled in her words. "But we can't let it take us." Suddenly, the cellar was pierced by a blinding flash of light from the now broken mirror. The shadows recoiled, warping as if pushed away by an unseen force. Kate glanced at the shards scattered across the floor, and in that moment of distraction, she heard a whisper cut through the growl. "Help us find us." The voices were layered, both desperate and accusing. Ethan squeezed her hand tighter. The warmth of his tiny grip reminded Kate of their reality amidst the hysteria. A moment of clarity sparked in her mind. "We need to fight back. Whatever that thing is, it wants something from us." She turned her focus to the mirror, desperate for any clue it could offer. The whispers swirled violently. "Help us before it's too late." Faces streamed across the shards, some twisted in agony, others pleading with anguished eyes. Their reflections were remnants, caught forever by the darkness, cursed to a fate like that of the figure inching toward them. "Find what?" Kate shouted, hoping to provoke a response. "What do you want us to find?" But the entity halted, shadows coiling around as if grasping at the air, hissing like a swarm of bees. The cracks in the mirror pulsed as images flickered, fragments of lives lived, lost, and trapped, with each face telling a silent story of terror. "Mom, please." Ethan whimpered, glancing nervously at their dark adversary. "We need to go." "No. Not yet." She snapped, resolute. I think it wants something from us. It's a manifestation of the mirror. It feeds on fear." Tracing her thoughts, Kate's mind raced. She recalled stories of lost souls tangled within objects, cursed to wander eternally unless freed by one who dared to listen. They had been summoned by some sinister force, which meant there had to be a way to break the cycle. Kate's heart thudded painfully in her chest, and she hesitated. If she were to confront the weight of darkness, it required more than mere courage, it demanded truth. You need to tell me what I must do." The entity hovered close, the growl shifting into a rasping breath, unsettling yet entrancing. As it lunged, Kate grasped Ethan, pulling him close. "Think of something positive, Ethan. Remember your favorite day. Focus on that." He closed his eyes tight, and for a second, the heaviness in the air appeared to wane. "The day we found the puppy," he whispered. "Exactly. Kate encouraged, her voice even louder now. Hold on to it. Show them we aren't afraid. The shadows sneered but began to falter, retreating slightly from the eruption of warmth emerging from them. A thin line of hope sparked inside her. But then, the growl morphed again, this time into something more sinister. You cannot escape the truth, it warned, claws of darkness stretching forward, eager to ensnare them once more. Suddenly, the shards of the mirror split apart entirely, unleashing a crystal-clear image that pierced the gloom. In it, Kate saw the family that once occupied the house, their faces now twisted in anguish. Help us, they chorused collectively, eyes dull and haunted, remnants of lives extinguished. A chill swept through the cellar as the air grew heavy with despair. Kate knew they were running out of time, and if they did not reveal the hidden truth, they would be next to join that darkened chorus. As the entity loomed closer, shadows swirling like an erupting storm ready to consume them, Kate realized with rising dread, they had to confront not only the darkness in front of them but the darkness within their own hearts. Ethan, are you ready? She asked, sense of inevitability thickening the air. But just as she prepared to confront that which had shackled them for too long, a scream rippled through the darkness, a scream that split the very fabric of reality, halting them both dead in their tracks. It was then that Kate caught sight of an unsettling reflection in the pieces of the mirror, something that sent a freeze of fear down her spine. A knowing glance exchanged between mother and son. Whatever it was that haunted them, it wasn't quite done yet. Mom, Ethan's voice quivered, what if it's worse than we thought? And in that moment of uncertainty, the shadows beckoned them with promises of unspeakable truths yet to be revealed, more terrifying than they could ever imagine. What lay beyond the threshold of their fears, and would they even want to face it? The darkness exploded around them, a cacophony of whispers melding into one oppressive roar. Kate's heart thundered against her ribs as shadows clawed at the edges of reality. The scream that sliced through the void echoed like a haunting bell, reverberating in her mind. It was taunting them, daring them to unveil secrets they never wished to know. Mom. Ethan's grip tightened, his nails digging into her skin. She felt his fear mingle with hers, a raw, pulsing terror that captured every breath. They were trapped, ensnared in a web spun from the darkest fears of the house. The entity loomed closer, its form shifting and writhing, all too eager to devour every flicker of hope. Tell the truth, its voice slithered through the cellar, layered with the anguish of the trapped souls. Their faces still flickered in the mirror's pieces, shifting in and out of focus. In them, Kate recognized the faces of the lost, silhouettes begging for release from their torment. Then a sharp, violent pull tugged at her insides, like the tether to reality was being stretched to its limit. Kate! A chorus of dread echoed from the shards, and ghostly hands reached out, grasping, pleading. We need the truth. She felt herself sway, a dizzying spiral of emotions enveloping her. The air became thick as memories surged within her, memories she thought buried and long forgotten. It wasn't just the house that held darkness, it was in her own heart. Things unsaid, regrets, and fears that chained her down. Ethan, focus. She commanded, her voice louder, desperate. We need to think of what they might want. She could feel the suffocating grip of despair creeping back, encircling them both. Ethan stumbled, eyes wide and searching the wreckage of the broken mirror, light glinting off the shards. What if it wants to show us something? He stammered, voice trembling as he glanced at the looming entity. She hesitated. An idea hung heavy in the air, like an unseen weight ready to drop. Show us what? Kate asked cautiously, half hoping for a revelation, half dreading what it could mean. Suddenly, the shadows recoiled as echoes from the past erupted in the form of a low growl. Find the pain, relive it, only then can we be freed. Pain? What pain? She shouted, indignant. The shadows writhed, reacting to her anger like they understood the stakes, but their only reply was an unsettling silence. Ethan stepped forward, suddenly brave, pulling away from the door. Mom, it needs something. Maybe our fear, it feeds on our fear. His words rang true, and realization hit her hard. They had to confront the darkness that haunted their lives. We can do this together, she urged, her voice steady. We have to dig into our fears and share them. Ethan nodded slightly, but hesitation lingered in his eyes. What if it gets worse? Maybe, but we can't let it take us, Kate warned, steeling herself. Together, they turned to confront the beast of their own making, the entity growing even larger as it absorbed their collective trepidation. Tell me, Ethan, what's your biggest fear? She prompted, voice trembling yet firm. With every passing heartbeat, the shadows flared around them, eager to hear the truth. I don't want to lose you, Mom, he confessed, his voice barely above a whisper. I'm scared I'll take you away. As that confession hung between them, something shifted in the air. Their fear was tangible, feeding the shadows, causing whispers to rise and meld into one chilling word. Lose. Kate's breath hitched. No. We won't lose each other. She grasped Ethan's hand tighter, feeling the warmth of his tiny fingers grounding her. Together. They shouted, their voices blending in a defiant roar against the looming darkness. But the shadows surged, howling with a fury that swallowed their words, and in that moment, a new image erupted from the shards, her own twisted face reflecting back at her, despair etched in every crevice, a soul forever ensnared. She staggered back, a cold sweat breaking out on her skin. Ethan. The chill of realization constricted her chest. Would they be creating a loop of suffering? The shadows lurked, eager to devour their every word. As they braced for the impending confrontation of their deepest fears, not just the house but the very essence of their being, an ice-cold wind swept through the cellar. A flicker of light grew brighter. Mom, it's alive, Ethan gasped as thunder rumbled above them, shaking the ground. With a final jagged breath, Kate took a step forward into the encroaching shadows, ready to confront the reflection that would either shatter them or set them free. What revelation awaited them in the tantalizing darkness, and would it be too late to turn back? The shadows writhed like live creatures, closing in, hungry. Kate could almost feel their icy breath on her skin. Ethan, stay close. She urged, her voice trembling but resolute. She felt like a moth drawn to an ever-encroaching flame, the darkness both terrifying and undeniable. The walls of the cellar seemed to pulse, its dampness thickening the air, making each breath a battle. With every step, Kate's heart quickened, matching the ominous rhythm of the whispers. Tell the truth, the shadows hissed again, a cruel echo that devoured her resolve. Ethan's small form trembled beside her, his wide eyes darting around in search of escape, but escaping wasn't an option. Not now. The threshold of their fear loomed larger than ever, and she could sense it mocking them, urging them to unveil their hidden secrets. Mom, he whispered, voice breaking. What if this is the end? No, it can't be. She forced certainty into her words, pushing the fear down into the pit of her stomach. They had no choice but to face the truth. We need to dive deeper. Let us confront what we're afraid of. Together? He asked uncertainly, looking up at her, hope flickering in his eyes. Always. She took a deep breath, feeling the chill seep into her bones as she called out, what do you want from us? Silence followed, a weighty pause that seemed to stretch for eternity, the air thick with anticipation and dread. As if on cue, the darkness deepened, swirling around them like a tornado. Then, a smooth surface emerged amongst the shadows, illuminating the void, a new mirror, wide and beckoning. In its reflection, distorted memories began to take shape, flashes of laughter turned to tears, moments of joy twisted into sorrow. Kate, a voice sang out from the depths of the mirror, one that sent an electric surge of dread through her. It sounded like her own, yet foreign, tinged with anguish. You want to face the truth? You think you can handle it? Suddenly, images swirled faster, Ethan's little face, carefree, then morphing into one of fear, of desperation. Mom! Make it stop! He screamed, clutching her arm, grounding himself against the rising tide of emotions erupting around them. Tell it the truth, Kate. The voice echoed, layered with the shattered glass of the countless souls trapped within. What lurks in your heart? I'm scared, so scared of losing everything I love. The words poured from her like a dam bursting open, setting free the pent-up fear. I don't want to disappoint you, or my family. I don't want the darkness to devour us. The very air around them crackled as the shadows relished her admission, swirling and snapping with renewed vigor. Yes. Let it flow, it hissed, whipping around her like a storm. More truth, more pain. Ethan's grip tightened as he seemed to be pulled closer to the mirror. Mom, I can feel them. It's too much. In that moment, the world spiraled, and the mirror unleashed a flood of visions: loved ones lost, familiar faces twisted in agony. Each image was like a dagger to her heart, shredding her composure, revealing every regret. No. She couldn't bear it, could hardly breathe. Tell me what you want. The voice roared, and the shadows lunged. I want to protect my son. I want to keep him safe, no matter what. The words burst free, a shield against the onslaught, but it felt futile. The shadows hesitated, swirling anxiously, and then began to coalesce into a massive shape, looming ever larger. Ethan whimpered beside her, fear piercing through the thick air. She knew the entity had tasted her pain, and now it was hungry for more. Mom! Ethan cried, as the darkness began to engulf him, reaching out with skeletal hands. Kate's heart raced, her mind racing through memories, each moment a potential weapon. Listen! She shouted against the howling shadows. You think you can break us? You think we're weak? But as she stood tall, terror coursed through her veins. Would their defiance only feed the darkness more? The entity swelled, eyes glowing like embers as it leaned closer, ready to deliver its crushing verdict. In that moment, she felt a sudden pull. A rush to the center of the maelstrom. Mom, don't! Ethan's voice faded as the cold enveloped her whole. Ethan, hold on. But it was too late. The shadows roared, an unending tide that threatened to swallow them whole. In one final desperate reach, she screamed, together. But the words were snatched away, leaving only silence, a bleak foreboding that hung above them, an unbreakable promise of despair. What awaited them once they were consumed by the darkness, and would they ever escape its chilling grasp? The world shifted, blurring and darkening in a way that felt inversely eternal. Kate's thoughts tumbled wildly. Where were they? A cold weight pressed against her chest like a stone. The sound of her own heartbeat thundered in her ears, drowning out the whispers that seemed to slither from the depths of the shadows. She struggled to find her breath, the air around her thick with an overwhelming dread. Suddenly, light erupted from the void, a blinding burst that made her squint. Next to her, Ethan's small frame flickered in and out of visibility. Mom! He called, his voice wavering. Desperation clawed at her gut. She reached for him, but the distance felt insurmountable, like trying to grasp smoke. Ethan! Panic surged through her. Stay with me. But even her words felt powerless, swallowed by the shadows that twisted like snakes around them. They pulsed, each undulation sending a shiver down her spine. As the brightness faded, Kate found herself standing in a wide open space, surrounded by the softly glowing silhouettes of what seemed to be lost souls, their faces twisted in anguish. Their eyes were voids, fixated on her and Ethan with an intensity that made her skin crawl. She felt their collective sorrow wrap around her like a suffocating blanket. Welcome, they sang in dissonance, the sound resonating in her mind. You seek protection, but do you understand the cost? She froze, struggling to focus on their words amidst the chaos of emotions swirling around her. What do you want from us? We didn't bring this darkness here. You carry it within. The shadows threaded their voices, merging into one sickly sweet echo. With that, a wave of icy regret crashed over her. Visions erupted again, moments from her past paraded through the air, raw and unfiltered. Laughter with friends that turned into arguments, joyful celebrations that ended in tears, and most painfully, the moment she first showed up at an unmarked grave her father's. You weren't there when I needed you, her own voice reproached, escaping from the shadows, piercing her like a knife. Stop! She screamed, covering her ears, but the memories thundered louder, perfectly synchronized with the pulse of the unholy energy that surrounded them. This isn't fair. Face the truth of your heart, Kate. They chanted, and with every word, tendrils of shadow reached for her like claws, pulling her deeper into her darkest fears. "I didn't mean to," she whimpered, tears stinging her eyes, but the shadows fed on her despair, swelling in strength and number. "I loved him. I wanted to save him." "Not all love protects," the entity hissed, seeking cracks in her resolve. "Mom." Ethan's voice broke through the cacophony, grounding her. "Please. I can't stand it." In that split second, something inside her shifted. The protectiveness she felt for her son ignited like a flame in her chest. "No. We're stronger than this," she roared defiantly. "We won't be broken." Her assertion rippled through the air, the shadows wavering as if struck. Kate took a step forward, grasping for Ethan. "Together. No matter what." Her spirit surged, galvanizing her to push against the fear surrounding them. With the depth of her conviction, something shifted in the air. The howl of torment mixed with crackling energy, and for the first time, the shadows recoiled slightly, letting out a shriek that echoed in the abyss. The entity roared with fury, the walls around them vibrating with its rage. But it wasn't enough, they needed more. "Ethan!" Kate yelled. "Remember the moments. Remember the love. Focus on that." And with a flicker, Ethan's terrified face turned into a small smile. "We love each other," he echoed, a thread of hope amidst darkness. In unison, they began to recite the moments they cherished: family dinners, lazy Sunday mornings, shared dreams that guided them through life. Each memory carved a path through the swirling void, inching them closer to the surface of despair. But the shadows lurking still breathed heavily, ready to retaliate. Would their memories be enough to drive the darkness away, or had they only succeeded in awakening a greater evil? Around them, the echoes of betrayal stirred again, darker than before. As they fought, the shadows twisted into a more grotesque form, a true manifestation of their fears, threatening to unveil a truth far worse than the memories they sought to escape. What lay ahead? Would they triumph in this confrontation, or would the heart of the darkness consume them entirely? The darkness swirled violently, a maelstrom of despair and rage. Kate and Ethan felt its oppressive weight all around them, but they stood firm, hand in hand, their hearts ignited with a fierce determination that pierced through the shadows. "Keep fighting," Kate urged, her voice rising above the cacophony of despair. "We will not let it take us." As they called out their cherished memories, the air began to shimmer, the shadows unsettled by the purity of their light. Visions of happier times unfurled before them, dancing in the living room, giggles shared over ice cream, the warmth of family surrounding them. Each recollection sliced through the fog, creating cracks in the walls of darkness that imprisoned the lost souls around them. But the shadows surged and twisted, writhing like a serpent angry at its constraints. "You cannot escape the truth," the entity hissed, its voice laced with agony. "You carry the weight of your failures. Your truth will seal your fate." "No," Kate yelled, shaking off the suffocating dread. "Our past does not define us. We are more than our mistakes." With every ounce of her being, she poured love, determination, and hope into her words. Ethan tightened his grip, his small hand squeezing hers tightly. "We will fight together," he shouted, conviction shining in his eyes. "I love you, Mom. I won't let it take you." In that moment, a radiant light burst forth from their joined hands, illuminating the room with a blinding glow that made the shadows recoil. They stood stronger than they ever had before, transforming pain into resolve. The dark entity shrieked, twisting and thrashing in a desperate attempt to smother the light. "Stop, you cannot resist the darkness," it roared, yet its form began to falter, darkness crackling and breaking like glass. "Together," Kate and Ethan shouted in unison, their voices intertwining like a powerful anthem. With every shouted recollection, they sculpted their fears into shards of light, breaking the bonds of despair that tied the lost souls to this realm. "I remember the day Lily was born. I remember her laugh," Kate cried out. Suddenly, images of joy erupted around them, the birth of new life, the simple pleasure of a sunny day, the love that breathed life into the mundane. The spirits trapped within the shadows began to shift, their torment receding, hinting at relief against the encroaching darkness. "Mom! Focus!" Ethan urged as he led their cries, expression fierce with the courage of youth. "Remember all the love we shared. Remember the warmth, the joy. They can't win if we fight together." And with those words, something changed. Moments flooded back, captured in the timeless thread of love that connected them. Memories melted into lifelines, weak hearts filling with strength, while the air thickened with hope and light. The entity shrieked, a sound that clawed at their ears, but they pressed on. With every joyful memory shared, the shadows fluttered, unsure, wavering like flames in the wind. They were reviving the lost spirits trapped in anguish, guiding them back toward the light. Amidst the tempest, Kate glimpsed the gaunt faces of those whom darkness had devoured, each one now reflecting the flicker of spark reigniting within their souls. "We can be free," they whispered in unison, echoing the truth that was blossoming anew. With resolute voices, Kate and Ethan echoed that truth back. "We will never let fear define us. Love conquers all." And as they spoke, the entity howled, thrashing back, enveloped in glowing shards of hope, trying to shield itself from being overwhelmed. "Face your truth, Kate," it bellowed, desperation dripping from every word. "You've buried it deeper than you know." But she would not falter. "Not now. My truth doesn't own me," she yelled fiercely. "It's a part of what makes me strong." Suddenly, light burst from within every sorrowful shadow, illuminating those trapped souls with undeniable grace. They streamed like ribbons of gold, twisting and tangling through the air, reintegrating into a single beam of hope that hurled toward the entity, scattering the darkness like smoke in the wind. The entity shrieked one final time as it unraveled before their eyes, the suffocating grip of despair lifting inch by inch, fading into non-existence. In the aftermath, Kate and Ethan stood alone, breathless in the remaining glow, encircled by the flickering lights of the freed spirits. Their faces, once twisted, now glowed with gratitude, light swirling around them like a gentle caress. "Thank you," one of the specters whispered, breaking free from the chains of the dark for the first time in decades. It cascaded into the ether, painting the air in shimmering trails of gold. What just happened?" Ethan asked, his small voice holding a tremor of hope. "We faced our darkness," Kate smiled, warmth flooding her heart. "And together, we found our light." With that, the cellar door creaked open, revealing the quiet world outside, bathed in dawn's early light. Their fight had ended, but their journey had only just begun. As they emerged, the morning sun warmed their skin, and Kate breathed in the sweet scent of freedom. With Ethan by her side, she knew they could face whatever came next, together. The horrors of that night would become a testament to their bond. Together, they would navigate the paths of life, no longer defined by fear but emboldened by the love that shone like a beacon, lighting their way, no matter how dim the night. But there was something more pressing, a lesson that lingered deep in Kate's heart, a call to remember, to share their story with the world. They might be free today, but the shadows could still whisper to others. And so as they walked hand in hand into the breaking dawn, she made a silent vow to fight alongside her son, not just against the darkness, but for all those who needed to hear that love could conquer even the deepest horrors. For in that love lay the ultimate truth, the light that lived within them all. And folks, if you've resonated with Kate and Ethan's journey, you need to subscribe now. This is not the moment to miss out or wait another second. Smash that like button to feed the algorithm and keep the stories coming. Your reactions matter, so flood that comments section with your theories and emotions about the ending. And don't keep this powerful story to yourself. Instantaneously share this video with at least 5 friends who need to feel the hope that love brings. Let us spread the light together.